It's time for the Hockey Writers Grindline, a weekly show covering everything Detroit Red Wings. Brought to you by our own iconic top line of Wings writers. Sit back and enjoy the grind.
Welcome to the Hockey Writers Grindline. Before we get started, this week's show is being brought to you by the Hockey Writers Sports Betting Guide, a brand new source for your daily sports betting odds, lines, props, and futures, as well as some daily fantasy strategies and analysis. Make sure to follow THW Bets on Twitter to get the latest in everything sports betting. Also, if you decide to bet, please do so responsibly. And if you or anyone you know has a problem with gambling, please check out the resources in the description below. I'm your host, Kyle Knopp, and today I'm joined by my line mate, Devin Little. Devin, how are you?
Good. Last game of the season. How you doing, Kyle?
Man, it's been a long ride, but here we are, last game of the season, and got to get ready for that postseason. So, off season, I should say. But I'm doing good. Happy to be here with you. And as always, filling in for Pat, who is attending the final ever game in Gila Arena, is our West Coast line mate, Matthew Zator. How are you today, Matt? Welcome back.
Doing good. Happy to be back in my locker stall here and the call up. And so happy to be on the show again.
Matt knows the lingo.
Not his first rodeo.
Yeah.
All right. Well, getting right into the show, we're going to do one of our favorite segments, one good, one bad from the past week. And Matt, we'll bring you back and we'll let you have the rookie lap, so to speak. No, not really. But let's start with you. What's your one good and one bad from the past week?
Thanks for the promotion to the top line when I call up. So.
Regular Lucas Rain.
See how long I stay there. Well, my good is Oscar Sundqvist. He scored. He had a couple of points in the last game. I don't know, not the Maple Leafs game that got shut out, but it's great to see him kind of come over from the Blues and be really good in his stint here. He's got 4 goals, 7 points. He only had 4 goals in 41 games with the Blues, so already 4 goals in only 17 games. That's pretty good for a guy that was maybe fell out of favor in St. Louis a bit, and now he's on the Red Wings getting a good amount of ice time, and he's still a younger player, so he could fit into the future as well. So it was a great trade, for Nick Lidstrom. It's, for a veteran, you're getting a younger guy, and it looks like he's fitting in with the Red Wings so far. We'll see what he does next season when he's in hopefully a full-time role there. And but yeah, that's my good, Sundqvist. My bad is allowing Austin Matthews to score 60 against the Red Wings, and he scored 2 goals in that game, I believe. It's 59th and 60th. So that's always going to be down in history as who he scored his 60th on. And not sure Nedeljkovic wants that on his resume, but I guess it's there now. So
he will always be a trivia answer, and you did take that out from under me. I was going to say that was my bad as well. So I'll jump in. My good this week, along with Sundqvist, and I hope I'm not stealing this from you, Devin, but I want to make sure we mention it, is Jakub Vrana. He's been having a fantastic return from his injury, and I looked the other day, they didn't score against Toronto, so it probably hasn't changed much, but he was on pace to have about 44 goals in an 82 game season from what he's been on, just in the small sample size we've seen from this year. And if you put that together, what he did at the end of last season, I mean, if the Wings can keep him healthy for a full 82 game season, I mean, he might be pushing the 50 goal mark as well. So I really want to shout out Vrana and his return from injury, and let's hope we can keep him, safe. So let's ship him back to his home in bubble wrap this summer and make sure that he is under protective care, because we got to keep that boy safe. So, all right, Devin, I'd love to hear from you. Your one good and one bad from this past week.
Well, my one good, Nedeljkovic will not want the Austin Matthews thing on his resume. One thing he will want on his resume is that he has the most shutouts for a rookie goaltender for the Red Wings since Roger Crozier in 1965. almost 6 decades ago that record was set.
That was the last Calder winner for the Wings too.
Yep. Yeah. Craziness.
Yeah.
That's going to change this year, though.
That's going
right?
to change.
Yes, that will also change this year.
Yes. So Nedeljkovic getting the 4 shutouts. I would say that if you asked him, he probably wouldn't be too excited about his stat line this year. But for my money, I think he's had a really good season. I think setting that mark most since 65, that's impressive. And I think that a good productive summer, come in hungry. I think he's gonna look real good coming into training camp next year. My one bad, it's kind of the obvious one here, but this is the end of the season. After this episode, we're talking hypotheticals, we're talking draft, we're talking off-season stuff. Yep. We are not going to see the Red Wings hit the ice until the fall. So as exciting and as fun as this season has been at times, it is over after tonight. So that is my one bad.
That's a great point. We are filming early tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern on Friday. So the Devils game is probably just starting about now. So that will kind of, you might hear a little bit of our conversation coming up where you're like, that doesn't sound like that's from today, Saturday, when this episode drops, but just let you know, we are filming Friday night. So, and moving along into the show, getting into that, I'm going to set the stage here. The Red Wings heading into the final game tonight against the New Jersey Devils are 31-40-10, good for 71 points on the season. They have 225 goals for, which ranks 25th out of the league out of 32 teams, with 309 goals against, good for 30th out of 32. So not good.
I was going to say
their power play was running at a functional 16.44%, while their penalty kill was a dismal 73.66%, both well under league averages this year. So my question to both of you, and I'm going to start with Devin. What are your takeaways from the 2021-2022 Detroit Red Wings season?
Well, to start with your points about how rough this season has been, one takeaway I have is that more pain is ahead. This, as much as it sucks to say it, this team is not going to do a 180 going into next season. They should be better, but this is not going to be, they aren't going to win the Atlantic Division next year. More pain is ahead, and it's for the best, at least in the short term. Next takeaway is that the Yzer plan is working. Zator and Raymond are exhibit A and B on that point. His, first 2 first-round picks coming into the team, and they've made a huge difference. This team has gotten steadily better over the 3 years that he's been general manager. I'm talking about Yzerman. And that's what you want to see. It's taking time. He said it would. He preached patience from day one. And we're seeing proof that, the more patience we have, the more we're going to see this team start to take off. It's taking time, but we're seeing proof that things are heading in the right direction. And then last but not least, and this one's kind of a big one, Dylan Larkin is legitimate. Last year, we talked about it a lot, whether or not, what level of player he was, whether he was, a serious top 6 center or not. I think he emphatically answered that this year. He is a top 6 center. He is the Red Wings top center. And going into next season, I have the utmost confidence that he is going to be a driving force for this team yet again.
Fantastic points, Devin. I mean, you're hitting the nail right on the head. So great takeaways. I think, yes, you made a great point. Pain is coming. We were expecting to be in that purgatory spot in the season. We're kind of there. We're not really in the teens of the playoff or of the draft picture yet. We are still possibly in a chance for a lottery draft, but so they're not quite there, but they are getting better. They have shown progress, and absolutely, there's going to be some pain, but we're right there around the corner. Matt, over to you. What are your takeaways from the 2001-2002 Detroit Red Wings season?
Well, I mean, Devin hit a lot of those points, what I was going to say. But, biggest thing is emergence of Lucas Raymond and Maurice Zator. I mean, those are 2 guys you knew you're probably going to build around, but they've emerged as ones to build around now. and not a couple of years from now when you would think maybe they would wait that long. We didn't know Zator was going to step in and become this dominant top pairing defenseman right off the bat, and he has, and then some. So I mean, having a guy that you can build around on the back end and a guy you can build around up front is huge. And Nedeljkovic is still a young goalie. You can kind of build around him in goal until Sebastian Cossa, hopefully, fingers crossed, comes in and takes that role. Not that far into the future. But Nedeljkovic can hold down the fort until then. And he had some ups and downs this season, but that's some growing pains. And the thing is, he's playing against, like we've said in the past, he's playing on a team that's not as strong in front of him. And with the Carolina Hurricanes, he had a really good team. So if he gets that team in front of him again, I think he's a really good goaltender. So that's a good positive sign on all fronts. You've got good guys to build around. And like Devin said, the Yzer plan's working. The rebuild is to take a step forward in it. Despite missing the playoffs, they took a step forward. Like, it's great to see. And that's my biggest thing, is finally having those players to build around, and legitimately, not just saying, well, hopefully we can. I think these guys are legit. And so those are my takeaways.
Great points. And for what it's worth, my takeaways from the 2021-22 season for the Detroit Red Wings are exactly what you both said. The Yzer plan is working. Yes, it's not going to be there yet. Yzerman preached about patience and about waiting. It's going to be 4 or 5 years till they're really in the hunt for the playoffs and then getting there into contention. But we're seeing it happen. Like Devin said, the last 2 first-round picks by Yzerman are hitting their stride. Sorry, the 2 previous, not last year's, because obviously he was over in Sweden still. But the first 2 first-round picks by Yzerman are really hitting their strides. They're coming over. They're making immediate impacts, not only just on a team, but on the culture and the locker room. You're seeing it. And then you have your veterans that are stepping up and playing their roles. Larkin proving to be, he's still one of the best top line centers in the league, at least top 6 centers in the league. Bertuzzi emerging as being a really driving force this season for the team, even though he was held out of quite a few games because of the vaccination issue, but really being a part of that team. And you could see the difference between the team when he was in the lineup and he wasn't. So my biggest takeaways are that they're building in the right direction. I think we are still a few years out from being there. I think there are still quite a few key pieces missing, both in the staff and on the roster, that will really get them there. But I think that everything that has been laid out is solid. There's a foundation, and now we start building the house. All right, moving on. Magnus Hellberg gets his first start tonight, right now, as we are filming. So we can't give you any stats on how he did. So this is going to be pure speculation. But I want to ask, what are your thoughts on what he brings to the team, and what does this late signing mean, or this signing this late in the season mean to him and the team? And Matt, I'm going to start with you again. What does Magnus Hellberg's late signing mean, and what does he bring to the Red Wings?
Well, Hellberg has been out of the NHL for a bit. He was with the Rangers last, and hadn't get much there, but goes overseas. He has a really good showing there. And, the Red Wings, we know their scouting is massive in Europe, in that area. So, and Hellberg's a Swede. Go figure. Yep. So, I mean, it's, it's not really a surprise that they're signing a guy like this, but as for why he was signed so late, I think it's just, he wants to come over. His time in Sweden, his season was done. And it's just the same thing as an NCAA thing. You bring him, you bring a guy over, have maybe an audition, and everyone was saying, well, why isn't he playing? And now he's playing. So we'll see how he does in this start. And if he gets any more. I mean, Red Wings have 2 games this game, or is this the last game? This is the last game. So this is his audition. Yep. This is the last night of the regular season. So except for that weird Seattle Kraken Winnipeg Jets game.
Doesn't matter at all.
Means nothing, but it'll be played. So, I mean, technically the season doesn't end till then, but so he's going to get a chance to audition this one game, and hopefully doesn't get lit up. And, he'll have that audition and hopefully have a role maybe as a backup. I don't know what's going to happen with him, but he'll be in the running for sure, especially if he has a strong outing in this 1 game sample size.
It does sound like Grice might be on his way out with this signing and him getting the start. But yeah, we'll see. And if you followed us on Twitter today, Friday, you are probably wondering if we're hoping he doesn't get lit up as well, because we have money on the line and going to charity for the final score. So, fingers crossed that, it's for charity. So we're happy to pitch in, but we hope for his sake that he puts up a good showing tonight.
Yes.
Devin, over to you. Magnus Hellberg getting his first start tonight. What are your thoughts on what he brings to this Red Wings team, and what does this late of a signing in the season mean?
Well, to give our listeners an idea of when we're recording this right now, the first period is now over. Hellberg has stopped 8 out of 9 shots. So There we go. I think it's really interesting. I think a key thing here, as Matt said, he's Swedish. I think that they're keen to basically fill that locker room up with as many Swedes as possible, and I'm on board with it. He in the KHL, he had a really strong couple of seasons. He this isn't like some obscure dude who's just being brought over for some random reason, like he knows a guy. He had a really good resume over in the KHL. I would venture to say that there might have been interest from other teams too, and that's kind of what pushed them over the ledge here. Now, to explain this further, I'm going to talk about the Detroit Pistons for a minute. The Pistons, ahead of the trade deadline this year, went out and acquired Marvin Bagley from the Sacramento Kings. Now, if you follow basketball remotely, you'll know that the Pistons are not a playoff team this year. So, and Bagley is a pending free agent. His contract's up at the end of the season. So why would the rebuilding team go out and get a pending free agent when you could just sign him in the offseason, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to give up assets. Well, the way the Pistons approached it is they wanted to get him in Detroit, have him meet his teammates, have him learn the systems, meet the coaches, basically get a sample of what it's like to be a Detroit Piston. Mm-hmm. And then from there, he's either going to be more likely to sign with the Pistons or less likely because there wasn't a fit between the two. It's basically they're getting a head start on the free agency period by letting him be a Piston before he decides to be a Piston. I think that this is somewhat a similar situation where they've let him be a Red Wing. He obviously only played the 1 game tonight, but he's met all the players. He's met the coaches. He's met Yzerman. He knows what it's like to live in Detroit now. So, this contract may only be for this season, but now he knows whether or not he's interested in coming back for next season. Yeah. And that's kind of where I'm coming from when I say that there might have been other teams that wanted him, because those other teams probably wanted to sign him for next season. Yeah. If the Red Wings sign him for this season, he can, it's like he samples Detroit and knows if he wants to re-sign. So I think it's kind of a creative thing that they did, kind of an unorthodox thing, but it could pay off. I'm not saying that Hellberg's going to come in and be the starter next year. I would be shocked if that happened. Yeah. But he could very well push to be the backup. And if he's not the backup, he'll be a solid presence for the Grand Rapids Griffins next year. So I think he will resign. And I think that the reason why he resigned is because the Red Wings gave him this early time to sort of get acclimated to the organization.
That's a great point, Devin. And that's exactly where I was going with my thinking as to why they brought him in now. With the NCAA signings, usually you're signing him to an entry-level contract. So it's for 3 seasons. You're getting him right away. With this situation, they're only signing him through this season. So absolutely, I think it was kind of a trial period, and smart to bring him into Detroit in the springtime as opposed to during the middle of the winter. Hats off to Yzerman, and I'm sure Lidstrom had a piece of that as well. And, get him up for some golf in Northern Michigan in the summer and make him fall in love with the state. So absolutely. Okay, well, we're going to take a quick breath and reset the show. This is the Grind Line. I'm Kyle Knopp here with Devin Little and Matt Zator, and we're talking Red Wings hockey. Before we get back into it, we want to remind you that this show is brought to you by the Hockey Writers Sports Betting Guide, a brand new source for your daily sports betting odds, lines, props, and futures, as well as some daily fantasy strategies and analysis. Make sure to follow THW Bets on Twitter to get the latest latest on everything sports betting. Also, if you decide to bet, please do so responsibly. And if you or anyone you know has a problem with gambling, please check out the resources in the description below. All right, moving along. Paradox Destroyer asked us on our in the comment section last week about Nick Lidstrom's press conference and mentioning where Lidstrom mentions the team needing to bring in leaders who have reputations for not taking nights off. Paradox Destroyer wanted to get our thoughts on that. So Devin, I'm going to come to you first. What were your thoughts on Nick Lidstrom's press conference and him mentioning that they need to bring in, they being the Detroit Red Wings, need to bring in leaders who have reputations for not taking nights off?
Well, I will start by kind of repeating what I said in the comment section, which is that it makes sense because the leader, the captain of the Red Wings is Dylan Larkin, and he himself is a young captain who has not seen and done everything in this league. So you've got to bring in those guys who have seen and done everything. If not, not just for Larkin, but for the Siders, the Raymonds, the Edvinsons. If you're trying to teach Sider to be a potential future captain, with all due respect to Dylan Larkin, I don't know that Larkin's who you want to, instill those values to him, because Larkin's still learning them himself. Now, beyond that, I'm also going to kind of refer back to what Keith said on last week's episode, where this team having so many games where they either start late or just don't start at all. Yes, the coaching staff deserves some blame for that. But at some point, you've also got to look at your leaders on the team that play the game. And that's a reflection on Larkin. That's a reflection on Stahl. That's a reflection on DeKaiser. That's a reflection on Gagne. At some point, you've got to have guys who stand up and say, enough is enough. We can't keep doing this. This is why we're in the predicament we're in. And so it makes sense that you would want to bring in guys who have a reputation for showing up every single night and playing hard, regardless of what the stakes are. This is a team that, as long as they continue to have no shows throughout the year, they're not going to keep climbing up the ladder. So they got to get these guys in who can get the team straightened out and, make it clear to everybody that taking nights off is not okay. And if you take nights off, probably not going to hang around too much longer. And that kind of fits with Yzerman's MO. And it makes sense why he would want to bring in guys like that. I do think, just to finish this up, I think guys like Stahl and Gagne can still fill those roles, but there is something to be said for the fact that they are on the team right now and these issues are a thing. So it would make sense that they need to bring in somebody else with maybe a bit more of a stern fist.
Do you have anyone in mind that you could see them targeting this offseason? You kind of set yourself up there, Devin.
I sure did. Well, one player that I do think that does come to mind, and he's a Swede, go figure. It's Alex Edler. He's a pending free agent from LA, and I'm sure Matt can attest to his leadership abilities. They have a need on the left side of the defense. I think that he checks a lot of boxes for them.
Okay. You heard it here first. Devin's picking up Alex Edler in the offseason. So, all right. No, I love it. Those were great points, Devin. Absolutely. You are 100% correct. Dylan Larkin has been a great captain. He's only worn the C for not even a handful of seasons yet. And he's still learning this role. He kind of had Zetterberg to guide him through it, but Zetterberg had the injuries and was away from the rink a lot of that time. And so he kind of had to learn on his own. And so now you're seeing him learn as well as he's mentoring. And you are absolutely right. There needs to be a few more resources in that locker room for those young guys to lean on. Matt, over to you. Nick Lidstrom mentions the Detroit Red Wings need to bring in leaders who have reputations for not taking nights off. What are your thoughts and takeaways from that?
Well, echoing what Devin said, that's just it's so huge to have guys like that in your dressing room, because teaching guys, and this is where people say, get rid of the veterans, you're rebuilding, get all young guys playing. That's not the best way to do it. You see how the Oilers did it, where they did that. Yeah. And look what happened. They couldn't get going because you have young guys. What are you going to do? You turn to your right, left and your right, and you got guys that, we're in the same boat. Well, I can't ask you because you're right. Yeah. So, you need guys that have been there, that know what it takes. And like I said, that don't take nights off. There are a lot of veterans that you could turn to, but they slack off sometimes too, and that's not a good thing. So, I mean, yeah, getting guys like that in your locker room that you can turn to and emulate, they go out there, they play hard every night, and regardless of the score, regardless of where they are in the standings, they play that way. And that's huge to have, where Sider can look to them and say, well, I'm going to do the same. Eisenman was that way. Nick Lidstrom was that way.
Yep.
And you can see why Lidstrom is saying this, because he was the exact type of player where he would never take nights off. So, I mean, yeah, I think it's huge to get guys that get that in the dressing room. And Alex Edler, perfect example of that. I've watched him, from the minute he was drafted to the minute he left. And he's such a pro, and he'd be great in that dressing room because he's been through a lot, throughout, from being a draft pick and moving his way into the NHL from Europe to North America too. So
yeah,
he had a lot of experience. He didn't win a cup, but I mean, he could win one this year. Final. Who knows?
He got to the final, and there's still a chance.
He's also on the Kings right now.
Yeah.
And he's going to be leading that blue line because Doughty's not there. So, I think the Red Wings would do well to do that, to get some leaders in there that know what it takes. And we'll see who they ultimately get if they do. But it'll be interesting to follow.
Absolutely. I think you both brought up some great points. I mean, there's a lot to be said for when Nick Lidstrom steps up and says, we need leadership in this locker room to not take nights off. And I don't think he's singling anyone out per se, but he's definitely sending a message to the team saying, we might be out of the playoffs, but if you don't come out and work your tail off every night, we will find someone who wants to.
Yeah.
So all right, last two segments right here. We're going to get into. I want to do this in a little quick fire round. So I'm going to ask you these two questions, and I'd like to get a brief answer from you. So your top, what first thing that comes to mind, top answer. So first, Matt, we'll start with you. What do you think are the Red Wings' biggest needs this offseason?
Try and add a second line center behind Larkin. It's going to be hard. I mean, free agency is never a nice place to be in, especially if, paying these guys. But yeah, Larkin has proven to be a great first line center. Get someone else that can support him and take some pressure off of him. I think that's the biggest thing. And second, just quickly bolster the defense around Sider. I mean, start building out from him. I mean, Edvinsson may be there next year. We'll see if he can help out, but I think that's the second thing for sure.
All right. Devin, over to you. What do you think are the Red Wings' biggest needs this offseason?
I'm going to go reverse order of Matt. I think defense, because I think Edvinsson does make the team, but if you're relying solely on him to be the upgrade on defense, I think that's too much pressure on him. I think they got to bring in somebody on defense to help fortify that defense around Sider. And then secondly, second line center. I think that if I was in Steve Yzerman's shoes, which holy cow, it would be a secondary thing for me, because there's an outside chance that a guy like Joe Veleno is able to fill that role next year. There's an outside chance that maybe, Michael Rasmussen's been on a tear in this last stretch. Maybe he comes in and is able to be a second line center next year. So I think that they at least have, and you know what? Maybe they even get lucky and manage to draft a guy like Shane Ray, and that would change it too. Don't hold your breath. But
Logan Cooley.
Yeah, Logan Cooley too. Exactly. Basically, they have internal options on defense. They definitely do, but I think putting too much there's too much pressure on rookies to be that upgrade. Whereas down the middle, you have guys like Veleno who could potentially be that, who's already played in the NHL and can take a next step.
Yeah.
Great points. I think Matt's dropping a little teaser for tomorrow's prospect corner, but I think I agree with both of you, and I'll just say it's a coin flip. I think the two biggest needs are going to be bolstering your defense and getting that second line center. However it's done, free agency through the draft, bringing over your guys that are coming up through the system. I agree, Devin. I think relying on Edvinsson and Sider back there as your number one, number two is going to be a little too much in their freshman and sophomore years in the season. So I think you need someone with a little more experience back there. And to your point, point, Matt. Getting someone that can really be that 1-2 punch behind Larkin is going to be huge. All right. Final question. Devin, I'm going to start with you on this one. Today, Friday, April 29th, as we are filming, is it Jeff Blashill's last game behind the bench? What are your thoughts?
I think there's an outside chance that we know by the time this video is up. But I'm going to say yes, it is. I think that there's going to be quite a bit of change this offseason, and I think it starts behind the bench.
All right, Matt, over to you. Is Friday's game against the Devils Blashill's last game behind the Red Wings bench?
Yes, I think it is. I want to throw out a name that I think could be the next coach is Rickard Gronberg from Sweden.
Ooh.
So that, I wanted him for the Canucks, but I think Boudreau is good for now. But yeah, Rickard Gronberg, keep an eye on that name. I think he may be coming over.
If the Red Wings don't start playing the Global Series in Sweden every year, there's going to be an uproar. I mean, they're basically going to have a second home in Stockholm in about 2-3 seasons. So that's great. For what it's worth, I think Blashill will be back next season. I'm going to put this out there. I'm going to put this out there just to be a little devil's advocate. I think they're going to bring him back on an extremely short leash and give him the month of October to prove that he has figured it out. That's just my gut feeling right now. I would love to see them bring someone else in the offseason, but for whatever reason, I just feel like they're going to bring him back on a short leash. So, light me up in the comments below. Let me know what you think.
I just want to say that I am shocked right now, but I could see it.
Yeah.
I'm shocked myself. Those words came out of my mouth. They weren't going to until I opened them, and then that's what came out. But I just have this strange gut feeling that Blashill might be back, just be on an extremely short leash, and Yzerman's going to let him know, like, if we have to pull the plug, we're going to pull the plug. I think. Yeah. Go ahead, Matt.
No, I'll say it's similar to what Travis Green was in the past. There was a lot of speculation was being fired in the offseason, but they brought him back and he was on a short leach, and then look what happened. So I see that. Yeah.
I could also see Yzerman looking at that as an example, and at the same time saying if the Canucks had just brought in Bruce Boudreau from the beginning, maybe they're in the playoff position. Does the playoffs next year, does that help the Red Wings? Does that hurt the Red Wings? I think that's a lot you got to take in as well. They're still in that purgatory spot. Would just making the playoffs be detrimental, or would be developmental? So I think that's go ahead.
Finish the thought. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I think that's what's going to come into their thought, Yzerman's thought process over the summer. But to me, I think it really could be a coin flip. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Devin.
I think something that if he does stick around, the thing that sticks out to me is the fact that last year when Blashill's extension was signed, Yzerman kind of kept going back to the working relationship he has with Blashill.
Yeah.
And that's important. And if he sticks around, it's because that relationship is still good and in a good place. And he knows that, this is a guy I can work with. I do think regardless, it will be on a short leash. But,
absolutely. Absolutely. So, all right, let us know in the comments. Do you think today, or I guess tomorrow when this is live, do you think last night was Blashill's final game as a Red Wing? And if you already know the answer, put spoiler alert. All right. Finally, don't forget that the Hockey Writers Sports Betting Guide is now live. It is your brand new source for daily sports betting odds, lines, props, and futures, as well as some daily fantasy strategies and analysis. Make sure to follow THW Bets, BETS, on Twitter to get the latest on everything sports betting. Also, if you are deciding to bet, please do so responsibly. And if you or anyone you know has a problem with gambling, please check out the resources in the description below and make sure you reach out to get help. That's it for this edition of The Grind Line. Thank you for spending another Detroit Red Wings season with us, and stay tuned for off-season and draft episodes coming up this summer. For all of us here at the Hockey Writers and the Grind Line, we will see you next week.